Hello, welcome on the Barricades. Welcome on your Eastern European podcast hosted by the Barricade. And we are going to discuss today something very interesting in the first part of our show, that is feminism in Italy. With me today, as usual, we have the co host, Bojan Stanislavskis. Thank you for being here with us, Bojan.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
And a very special guest who's a journalist at a very interesting media platform that publishes articles in Italian and also in Spanish, the Other News, and also an activist, mother of three, and also musician, Cecilia Capanna. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Well, Italy has been the first Western country to initiate a lockdown. It was severely hit by the pandemic. And before going into our topic today, that it's a bit more general, like feminism in Italy, I would like you to give us a brief presentation of what happened on the political Italian scene, since recently we had the resignation of Giuseppe Conti, and then we have, I think Mario Draghi is his name. He was called also the Super Draghi, and he was given all sorts of nick or Super Mario or something like that. He was given all sorts of nicknames because he was the chief of the European Central Bank for almost 10 years. So let us discuss a little bit on the situation in Italy, the political one, and then move to our main topic, that is Berlusconi's legacy and feminism in Italy.
So, as you know, Italy has been the first Western country hit by the pandemic, and it was really bad, mostly because we didn't know anything about the virus, and it took us a little time, a little while, to understand what was going on and how the contagious was happening, how everything was working. We didn't know. And this was a time of suspension of everything in our country and then all over the world, as we are all experiencing in these days, since 1 year ago, actually. What happened politically is that the government, I think they tried to do their best in order to stop the number of people getting sick, mostly because, you know, our health system was about to collapse, and it collapsed in the north of Italy at a certain point. So unfortunately, a lot of people was, I don't want to say left at home dying, but doctor had to choose who to save and who to not save, as in a war, because actually what we are facing, what we are going through is a real war. But then with the lockdowns, and we are now again going through another lockdown, a kind of lockdown, not strict like the first one, but it's pretty strict. The government tried, and Giuseppe Conti, as the premier, tried to stop all this tragedy, or to contain this tragedy. What happened is that the Italian economy, that was really, really bad already, was going down. And so all the governments, I think, all over the world, they had to choose whether to save lives or the economy, the economy of the country, which is very sad. People got very poor. We had about 1 million of new poor people in Italy. And what was not appreciated about Conte's decisions is that he didn't listen to the parliament before taking his decisions. So this is a point that made him look like, I don't want to say a dictator because he's not, but somebody who a little bit broke some rules of democracy. And he already wasn't elected. I mean, we are going through a number of governments that are not elected. Why? Because no party is getting so many votes in order to be the prime party, the only one party. They have to make coalitions, and every time they break up for some reason. Conte is from Cinque Stelle, which is the populist movement. It's a movement. They don't want themselves to call themselves a party. And they started as a movement against politics, no? And so what happened then? Then happened that Europe started to install this money to help European countries, mostly Italy, which was the first one to be hit, and because of that, was the one who lost many lives and also a lot of money. In that moment, they started arguing. I mean, they have been keeping arguing for years. Because talking about Berlusconi was able to translate politics into soccer language. So it is not a dialogue anymore. It's like, I support this team, you support that team. We just can argue and say, you boo, and we are the winner. This is the level of the interaction and dialogue between the parties nowadays. And so Matteo Renzi, who is a PD ex-premier, I don't know if that the young one, very active, and now he's back. He tried to make Conte's government fall because all this money were arriving, all this money was coming. And, you know, in Italy, if you watch the documentary, and there are many documentaries about Italy and Italy's corruption and Italy's way of using money, wasting money that comes from Europe and also that comes from taxes. So he started to mine the government. Then it was expected to happen an agreement on something. I don't want to be specific because otherwise I take 1 hour. And when Antonio Conte realized he would never achieve that agreement with his terms because of the opposition of Renzi, he gave up and said, okay, I'm done, I go away. And that's how they thought about Mario Draghi, who is the most, he is an authority, he's the most valuable, and you can trust him, trustable person in front of Europe, no? Because of the role he had. And now he's managing all this situation in order to try to use the money that will arrive in a good way. But unfortunately, yesterday I already read a very not very nice news. It's about the cancellation of some taxes for people who were unable to pay. And they canceled taxes from 2000 to 2010. I mean, who didn't pay?
I mean, they canceled taxes of the people who couldn't pay before the pandemics. I very much like the way you said the one thing that I think in a way Berlusconi was some a sort of politician that based all his political career on media and media platforms. And you said a very important thing, that he was able to translate politics into a soccer language, into the language of a soccer game. Now, I want you to explain a little bit about Berlusconi and why is he so important. I would just make a suggestion here that I often discuss with my students this particular situation. And for those viewers that do not know, Berlusconi owned almost 90% of all the media in Italy for quite a while. So he was extremely powerful. He had a number of TV stations and publishing houses. He was a media mogul, and he was basically one person dominating almost all media in Italy. And what is the difference between that and what we had in Romania when the Communist Party had everything and control and absolute power? Because you see, when you don't put some sort of restraint on property and media property, you end up with this situation when one person is the dominant figure in the media landscape. So
I have to say that what we were submitted to is a kind of cultural hegemony of the bar conversation. So what he did, he tried to lower the level of culture in order to get all these supports and all this consensus, translating the politics language into the discussion that people do when they drink and play cards at the bar. So what they do, they talk about, they are mostly men, first of all. They talk about women, they talk about politics, but in a way which is hilarious, ridiculous, and they talk about soccer. So this is what he did. And before the empire he built, so when he built this empire, he was very good in putting in his content, in this recipient, all these low-level things in order to steal the audience from the
public space.
the public station. What happened? It happened that there aren't rules. So whenever a private or also maybe communist TV, so if the law is allowing this, what do you want? He did what he was able to do. Nobody. They tried to tell him, okay, there is a conflict. And he gave all his empire to his brother. But it was him. I mean, it is his brother. And then there wasn't the left party. D'Alema wasn't the one, and he was able to do that made a law that suggested the bill to stop this conflict, in order to stop this. And so he was able to build this empire, and nobody could say anything because they were all involved already. And he tried to, also his foreign policy. His foreign policy was based on the same kind of conversation. You are a man, I'm a man, we like women. So what? Okay, with a whistle, come on. Tons of women to Putin's parties. He was partying all the time, like Bunga Bunga was also a way to get connected to people and to share a kind of deep, dark, we can say dark side of men, but which is not good, which belongs to the caveman period. I mean, you are supposed to evolve in 2020, 2000, at the time it was until 2011. That's the year when he was forced to leave. So this changed a lot Italian culture, also because in his recipient of communication, he was the first one and the only one who was importing all American stuff, all American TV shows, Dynasty, Dallas, A-Team, a lot of things that I remember. You are much younger than I am, but they made us become kind of mini Americans. So Italians were very infatuated by American culture because of this bombing of American shows, American way of thinking, American way of dressing, Wanagana speaking, and this is what happened. Besides that, he kept the Italian culture lower level, soccer, women, and all this low-level discussion.
I want to go now to Boyan because, of course, I have tons of questions for you. Since in Romania, Italy is very important. I mean, Romanians form the largest migrant community in Italy. More than 1 million people went there to work because there is a resemblance of language, and it is, I think, for Romanians, it is the easiest way to the easier language, I mean, because they resemble so much. But I don't want to monopolize, and I want to turn now to Boyan. I think he has plenty of questions for you.
Right. I don't want to interfere in the general train of thought. You want to discuss about feminism and the problems that Berlusconi created for this idea. All right, but I just cannot, I cannot but comment on certain things that were said, particularly about the media question. I'm also a media person. Okay, I've been in publishing, in the publishing business for the last over a decade. Okay, and I've got some very close observations, and also how journalism works, what kind of psychology people develop when they join the mainstream media, and what kind of how it shifts the psychology. I mean, massively when a new strong, charismatic person, because regardless of what we think about Berlusconi morally, I mean, he was charismatic. And I think we could say
he
that.
Is.
Oh, he is, yeah.
He's back now with Mario Draghi because he's
right.
with Mario Draghi actually, so we
right.
have him back now.
Yeah. So, but what I want to say is that you mentioned the question of Americanizing the Italian culture, and of course it brings about a lot of phenomena that you said, like people start to dress in a way similar to what you can see on American sitcoms. People start to behave that way. People start to speak like that. People borrow a lot of words from American English and so on and so forth. But they also have the kind of media thing, and the media thing that I have in mind is that a great comment was made by Noam Chomsky long ago, where he said that, okay, we don't have state-owned media in America, but we have privately owned media in America, but any dictator would be thrilled, would be thrived to have media that obedient to power as the American ones, okay, regardless of, the ownership issue. So I think that also is an American thing that Berlusconi did not develop himself, okay, but he just borrowed it because the model was there. And I think he just...
Sorry for interrupting you. Actually, when he got down on the field, as he said, when he started to do politics, and when he started to do his own business with communication, he said that he did it because a public station was owned by the government. So what he used as an excuse to start this kind of job, to start this kind of business, is I want to rescue you from this dictatorship of your government that is owning and controlling all the information that you are receiving, that you are watching it. And I mean, he wasn't that wrong in this, because of course public station is always influenced also because of corruption in Italy, and the lack of meritocracy you are the son of this. Okay, you can work here, and I put you here because you are a friend of mine. And every time the government changed, all the people in the station used to change as well. So
yeah, but please let me just interject here, because I mean, you're totally right, of course, in your analysis and everything that you just described. But also there could be, and there is in America in particular, a revolving door between the government, the military-industrial complex, and the media. If you look up the MSNBC today or the CNN and you look at their experts, their panelists, you will see they are all former generals, former chiefs of staff, former spies, former, all kinds of the officials from what is now largely referred to the intelligence community, which basically means a group of highly demoralized people who will do everything.
anything to
Yeah.
So I don't think Berlusconi was trying to copy this kind of. He was just doing what was convenient for him, and he was trying to ride opportunities that came up in order to do his interest and the interest of his friends, that I cannot say it was mafia, but because unfortunately, luckily for him, I don't know, we don't have proofs of that, but there are many suspects about how he received and he collected so much money to start his business. So nobody, he says some donations. It's very vague about that. But
Of course, there are all
he,
donations. We also have in Romania a very known case where his aunt gave him the money.
Look, I want to just interject, because we have a priest, okay, a very powerful priest in Poland who runs his own media empire, okay, and he said quite recently, a couple of months ago, when he was asked about one of the limos that he owns, he said that he received it from a homeless person as a donation.
He must be a friend of Berlusconi, though.
Oh, I'm sure they could be doing all kinds of bunga bunga and that kind of things together. Absolutely, I think that's totally possible.
But tell me, what was, because I saw a documentary, and one of the images that really stuck with me for a while was that of young women just, desperately trying to get into Berlusconi's shows. I mean, he created some sort of role model. He created and he changed, the social, how should I say, he created a model for young girls to follow up. He created all these idols, and there was in parallel a young boy that was trying to get and to become a celebrity. Becoming a celebrity became like an obsession. So that image of young girls just trying, they were basically in their bathing suits and trying to get into the shows and to get hired there. So I think it is very important for the feminist movement and also for gender roles in Italy.
So actually, I was a spectator of all this, because I was in my almost 20. So when he was doing in my teenage, I was a teenager actually, and then in my 20s when he ended up doing that. And so being an Italian woman, I can tell you that already Italian culture is very, very sexist. So women always, they feel they are invisible. They feel they have not power to do stuff. They are not heard when they speak. They are already destined to the kitchen and to raise, to grow up children. And so what Berlusconi did has a twice aspect. First of all, I give you my attention. So I am empowering you in a certain way because you're beautiful, not because you're smart. Then he did also that, but the first time when he was just a communicator, I'm empowering women. I'm trying to find the right spot for you because you are valuable, because you're beautiful. And all the little, there was a show that was called Non è la Rai, which means this is not a public station, briefly. And it was about 30 very young minor girls under 18. They were all dressed like the same. They were singing and dancing all together. And any friend of mine would have signed with the blood to get into this and to be one of those, because you are desirable and you become rich also because you earn your own money and everybody knows you. So the celebrity side is one aspect of the psychological motivation to do that. That there is money you get, and there is also acceptance.
You get socially accepted, but you also had Emma Bonino. I think let's end up in a very what do you say about her? Because at least she was a different kind of politician.
She has always been a different kind of politician. She belongs to the party which is the radical one. Radical party has always been a party supporting the feminism movement. Thanks to radical party, we women, Italian women, we achieved the law for divorce. To change the rules of the family, which were terribly old style, old fashioned. Like a woman was owned by her husband. Like she was like a minor son. She was compared to somebody who was not an adult. And then we achieved also the right to the abortion, thanks to Emma Bonino and all her party and all the and also the left, the very left side, and all the battles we went through. So when she got along with Berlusconi, I was a little bit impressed, because I said, "What?" But I think she wanted to crash the system or try to change the system by inside, because he had so many people supporting him, and he just I think he just did 60 days of campaign and he won the election like this. I mean, it's crazy. And he won the election 3 times in a row, and he's been there for 20 years. So I don't know exactly what she was thinking, but then she got her way, and she's still fighting for women's rights. She's a very, very strong, capable, smart, and it's an honor to be Italian if Emma Bonino is a woman from our country. I mean, and what Berlusconi did also is he gave a value to women in the parliament. So he's always saying, a lot of members of the government are women, thanks of me, because he called all these girls of the Banga Banga to do the ministers. I mean, from the TV show with a bra and underwear to the parliament, and no judgment, because this was something that is a very smart weapon for him. Some of the women that got in the parliament were smarter than him, because they started studying and showing we are able to do that. It's true. What he did, he gave a very important role to somebody who wasn't able to get there. I mean, who didn't have the, I don't want to say capabilities, but they didn't study to get there. I mean, they weren't ready to get there. And how? In this way, he got their trust forever. So they were, how to say, forever
Loyal.
for him, loyal to him forever because of that. And then, because, you know, when you are such a powerful man, you have a lot of enemies. And in a world that is led, in a society that is led by men, if you put friends of yours in the government, trusting them and expecting from them loyalty, you're not very sure 100%. If you put them, some friends of yours that are women, you empower them in a role, up to a role that it's not, they are not at the level to get there, they will be loyal to you forever and ever and ever. So this is what he did. He did twice. He was a positive enforcer in this way, but it's not. I mean, it was always
I
to
know.
his own
This is
interest.
what happened also in Romania, because they chose, the Social Democrats chose women that were very obedient to the leader, the supreme leader. That
Yeah.
was Dragnea, the equivalent of Kaczynski, but luckily for us, he's in jail now. So, Boyan, if you have something to add, if not, we are going to end the first part of our show and move to the next topic.
No, yeah, we can go ahead. I was just going to ask for the end. Because I realized this was very traumatic to have like a persona like Berlusconi at the top of your state, basically leading, okay, as the leader of the Italian nation, and I'm just wondering, do you think it's going to take a long time for the Italian society, for the progressives, for women, for those affected, really to overcome this trauma? I mean, is this a very deep cut?
There's a journalist, Severnini is his name. He once wrote a book entitled "The Berlusconi in Us." So Berlusconi reflects Italian culture and society and psychology, but we have a little piece of Berlusconi already in us. So it's a very difficult thing to do. It's like you have to cut your arm off, because he was enforcing an Italianity, being proud of that, which is not the best part of Italian culture, actually. It's the worst one. But still it's there. It is still there. When he left, the streets were full of people celebrating. Mostly young people singing hallelujah, singing whatever, all the cars horning. It was like they won the championship, soccer's championship. And I thought that this is a good reaction. It means they want to be different. But if I see now what is going on with the culture and with social media, because we have now another phase of communication, the digital one, which is also an anthropological huge change all over the world. The temptation to be under the spot, to be a celebrity, to be the one well known with likes from everybody is still there. I mean, human beings are weak. So what I think it should happen is law and rules. There was a lack of rules when he was leading as a politician and as a communicator, and there is a lack of rules also now with Facebook and whatever. So when a private one is leading communication all over the world, he has to be under a system of rules. because it's very easy. Human beings are weak. The personality and psychology is weak. It's very easy because you feel frustrated, you feel alone, you feel not considered. This society also we are so many, is very individualistic now because nobody cares about who you are. I want to be me, io, always I, with everything. And so it's very easy for the owners of the communication system to ride this will to be everybody a celebrity, everybody well known. I don't know if Berlusconi, that transition is going on. I think this is much worse now. It's getting even worse. And this is not his fault now. Now it is a different phase. It's a totally different phase of word communication. Now we are a globe. There is a bigger globalization, and we are citizens of the world. And now the problem is worldwide.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. Thank you so much, Boyan. It
You're
was
welcome.
very interesting, and I hope our viewers find interesting the thing that you said, and especially look up Emma Bonino because she is really an interesting politician, a woman to look up to, a fighter, and an inspired figure of Italian politics. So to have some sort of optimistic end to to the first part of our show, I'm going to play right now a video, and then we are going to go back to the second part of our show where we discuss American politics this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome, friends. Welcome to the second part of our show today on the barricades. This is me, Maria Cernat, and the co-host Boyan Stanislavski. Thank you for being here with us.
Hey. Nice
So
to be
we
here.
are going to discuss some very depressing thing right now. I told you right before we started discussing with Cecilia that I really hoped that maybe, just maybe, the fact that Biden is old is going to make him wiser. And I really hope, because hope dies last, that he would not go ahead with the same Cold War rhetoric against Russia. I really hoped that things would, change, because I'm so tired of this anti-Russian sentiment amplified beyond paranoia. And unfortunately, this was not the case. So please elaborate on that. Even though
Right, I think that the last week was very symbolic. One should say for the American political class, for the quality of the politics that they are able to conduct, and particularly in the field of foreign policy, because the last week was a train wreck for the American. I don't know. I was going to say diplomacy, but as we know. Or as it's easy to observe, Americans just don't understand the notion of diplomacy. Okay, but okay, let's just say that for the sake of of the argument, that it was a train wreck for them. Now there was this meeting in Anchorage, which I don't want to elaborate on right now because I could speak about that for half an hour. But this was a total disaster. Okay, and like the Chinese prevailed totally on every level, in every aspect, and it was so humiliating for America. Okay, and then the same thing with the Russiagate basically becoming a policy, from it being a hoax, from it being a pumped up beyond any, as you said, like amplified beyond paranoia, conspiracy theory. It became a policy now. Okay, and the fact that an accidental journalist asks Joe Biden, okay, on live television, whether he thinks Vladimir Putin, who's the the president of the Russian Federation, is a killer, and Joe Biden going like almost he has just woken up from sleeping. Going, yeah, I think he's a killer. And my question here is, how do you walk that back? Okay, like what do you do? How do you sit at one table afterwards and start discussing whatever? Okay, and I don't quite understand how is this even remotely possible. Okay, so what the Russians did is they summoned their ambassador, okay, Anatoly Antonov from the United States, and then they put out a statement which was delivered by Maria Zakharova, who is the spokesman for the Russian Foreign Ministry, and she said that they had to do this in order to prevent, and I think that's even in the written communique, they had to do that in order to prevent irreversible degradation of relations. And I think, when I read it, I thought to myself, wow, there's at least one adult in the room, okay? Because really, I mean, if they had done exactly nothing, I wonder what would be the next step taken by the Americans. Like they would call, they called Vladimir Putin a killer, and what's next? That I don't know, that he eats, for example, every morning for breakfast a little baby's liver or something like that. I don't know, but now everything.
Interject something here. Just imagine that Vladimir Putin would have come and said Joe Biden is a killer. Just imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, and the infantilization of international politics is unbelievable. I mean,
Absolutely.
and whatever you may think of him, because it's very hard to like him. It's very hard to like a political leader that stayed in power for so long, because for many reasons. But you don't go on television when you are in such a position and start, saying these things like you're on a table with your wife.
Yeah, but I think that speaks exactly. But I think that speaks to what Cecilia said about the soccer language, soccer politics, like whatever you want to call it. I think Matt Taibbi wrote described it great in his book Hate Inc., where he said that it's basically this. I mean, politics became the kind of soccer game or football game, whatever. Like where there are two teams, and one side cheers for one team and the other side cheers for the other team, and then people are clashing. Okay, somewhere in the public sphere, and it's very spectacular. But of course, it only brings destruction, because when you have like two hooligan groups clashing, then you only get destruction. But no, okay, let's try to look at it. Although I understand that it's difficult, of course, but let's try to look at it seriously, okay? Because I think it's in the interest of the entire world that Russia and the United States sit together and start discussing, because you said quite rightly that it's like the Cold War rhetoric and so on and so forth, but it's actually worse than the Cold War. When you speak to the people that lived through the Cold War, they will tell you they are terrified. Like my father, for example, my parents, they've never seen anything like that, such a light-minded attitude, because, and it didn't start today. It didn't start with Joe Biden. We can go back a couple of years when they accused Russia of Novichoking some people, ex-KGB spy in Britain, when the Secretary of was it the Secretary of Defense of the United Kingdom said something like Russia should shut up and go home, and he said it live, okay, on live television. I mean, this is a kind of language that that no one has ever used in the times of the Soviet Union. Okay, I mean, they're obviously, the bureaucracies back then were much more sane. Okay, from the point of view, I mean, they anticipated certain results of what they're going to say, or what they're going to do, and so on and so forth. Now it's like, American exceptionalism went beyond any kind of control. They really think they can do anything, say anything, and everybody has to bow to them. And I think that what happened now, particularly in Anchorage, but we're probably going to talk about it on some other program. Maybe we could invite an American guest. But that was like, the Chinese said, we're not going to be lectured. Okay, you're not going to lecture us anymore. And then, Russia made that point many times, and has been making that point pretty much since 2005, since the Munich speech delivered by Vladimir Putin back then. But even when you look back a couple of weeks ago with Josep Borrell, okay, this again, like, you don't go to Russia, okay? You don't go to Russia without any agenda, without any diplomatic agenda. You go there and you think you're going to figure it out on the fly. Well, what happens is that while you are there, they throw out 3 of your diplomats, okay, because they took part in illegal protests and so on and so forth. And Borrell went there just thinking that he's going to lecture them on human rights, he's going to lecture them on democracy and stuff like that. What did Russia do? They just showed we're not going to be lectured. I mean, you're always welcome. If you want to speak, you know the address, but we're not going to accept this kind of attitude anymore. So I think that both Europe and America, they just shot themselves in the leg, or maybe even a little higher than that. So this is really the state of affairs. And secondly, okay, let's be intellectually honest. Okay, you said it's difficult to like Vladimir Putin. I think it's difficult to like Vladimir Putin, definitely. And even if you look at his record in terms of like killer. Okay, let's say Russia had some over the last because Putin's been in power in some capacity since 1999, 2000. Okay, and like president, prime minister, Security Council member, and so on and so forth. Now, throughout the last 2 decades, Russia has had some aggressions, wars, like the thing in Chechnya, then, Georgia tried to invade Russia. Okay. And there was some fighting there, and Ukraine, Crimea and stuff. But then, look at America and look at Joe Biden, who has been, while he has been in power for less than Vladimir Putin, what they did together with Barack Obama, they continued Afghanistan, they continued Iraq, they drone bombed Pakistan, they drone bombed Somalia, Libya, which was a thriving state. They turned it into a mess, a complete, a slave market kind of thing. And you want to talk about killers? How about you look in the mirror? And that's pretty much what Putin said when he was asked about it, because finally, he was asked about the reaction.
Not a very good argument, because it's not like I killed 2 people and I say to you, Boyan, but you killed 5, so you're worse than me, because
oh no,
2 wrongs don't make a right. I don't think that would have been the best option, but the best option is to say, look, exactly what you said at the beginning. When you say something so trivial, so aggressive, so violent, how on earth are you going to meet and discuss about what?
Yeah, you're totally right, and I absolutely, of course. But I didn't want to compare. I didn't want to compare the casualties, okay, and the atrocities and everything, because I don't think that this kind of statistics really make sense. But what I wanted to say is that Joe Biden is a killer, much like Vladimir Putin is not nearly remotely a killer of a size of Joe Biden and the American empire's leaders. So I just think it's intellectually and by any stretch, it's just meaningless to even say that. And on top of everything, it's all done in the favor of the Democratic Party, which has to do all kinds of its shenanigans in terms of domestic politics, because that's why the hostility of Russia grew in 2016. So that shows you how cynical the leaders, okay, of the United States are, in order to put the world on the brink of nuclear conflict, okay, to an extent where everybody trembles, especially those who know the history of the Cold War, just because they have to figure out the ways, between the Democratic Party, Trump, Republican Party.
Very, very important point. I listened recently to one of Professor Wolf's discourses on this type of rhetoric. And he said, do you really think, taxes, tariffs, declarations like this one never worked? What is Vladimir Putin supposed to do? To come humbly and say, yes, I am a killer now and I'm going to go home and apologize to you. Is this narrative plausible? It never works, but it puts you in a favorable position in the eyes of a certain part of the American constituency and electorate. This is all done for cynical reasons. As you say, they don't care about consequences. They care about them being, the strong man that really sticks it to Vladimir Putin and says what it has to be said, and so on and so forth. And, but what about the consequences?
Right.
And what do you expect to happen? What is the positive outcome?
Yeah, but I think it's even worse than that, because if they really wanted to be to demonstrate that they're doing something for the people, for the electorate in the United States, what they would have done, what the electorate is expecting them to do. For example, give them health care, okay? which the Russians have. So, but they don't want to give them healthcare. They don't want to give them, I don't know, compensation for the crisis, the ongoing crisis related to the development of capitalism and COVID and stuff like that. They don't want to do this. Instead of that, they're going to Russiagate everybody. They're going to gaslight they're going to continue to gaslight the entire nation because Russia. Like, what do you want? Like, Russia basically has demonstrated over the last 10 years that it wants to be left alone. It doesn't want to be invaded. It doesn't want to be endangered. And like pretty much everything that happened, but in terms of the conflict and that was also said in the communique issued by the Russian Foreign Ministry, that it's a dead end. We're in a dead end, and this is because of Washington's actions. And they just don't, like Russiagate obviously became a religion, so now everybody can exploit that. And as you said, regardless of the consequences, but the consequences are there, and they're going to continue to appear. Okay, they're going to continue to happen. And I think it makes sense to also refer to the question of Crimea, because it's been 7 years now, right? So I
say here that in Romania, if you dare to say something other than the US is saying about Crimea, you're done. And my only observation is simple. Am I right? Because I read something and there are a lot of Russians in Crimea. Why are you so surprised that they wanted to be with Russia and not with Ukraine? In case the political power changed and it shifted from a political power that was pro-Russian to one that was anti-Russia. What is the big surprise here? I mean, think of yourself. I mean, if you're Russian and you are in Crimea, which side are you going to take?
Of course, especially when you're attacked.
I mean, it's so logic, but no.
Yeah, but I wanna go back to this. What the question of the dead end in America, but because that's really the product of the so-called annexation. I don't think it's a correct term to call it annexation, because you annex territories through military action, which didn't really happen. There was not a single shot fired, by the way. Anyway, the process of taking over Crimea did happen, and it happened because America produced this kind of weird right-wing extremist coup in Ukraine in 2014. And hey, America, have you had not done this, probably there would be no Russian troops in Crimea and stuff like that. It's all the unintended consequences of your crazy foreign policy, okay? And now when the legitimate leader of the American nation is this walking corpse, okay, mindless, senile, barely walking corpse, let alone climbing stairs, which we saw quite recently, then I just don't see how it's going to end well, okay, for anyone here. And I'm really afraid that this could lead to something that's going to get out of control, and that there are some factors in American politics which might not be on the surface, but that have major incentive for war. And this kind of war could be absolutely disastrous for everyone. And look, about Crimea, I want to say that regardless of what you think, regardless of whether, because you said about the Russians there, the Russians that voted that they want to stay with Russia because the new government installed in Kiev attacked them very viciously, not only them, but also the Russian-speaking and Russian-identifying people in the east of Ukraine. That's all true. But even if you don't buy that, okay, even if you're this kind of thick-headed, liberal, democratic, MSNBC, CNN, BBC consuming person, fine. But you got to acknowledge and admit one thing, that unlike territories, countries occupied, invaded by the United States, in Crimea there is no destitution. People are much better off. You can see all the pollings that were, that were produced and reproduced in the Western media, and that there is something going on which people living there perceive as positive, and it's a development for them. Okay, so there is no comparison. Okay, there is no atrocities. There are no deaths. There's no inferno like in Iraq, where like millions, hundreds of thousands, or maybe a million people have died because of the American intervention, or like in Afghanistan, which is barely a country. It's like a country run by warlords, or Libya, right, where you have slave markets
Yes,
and
yes.
stuff
And
like
I
that.
just
So
looked it up on the internet right now, and the population, the Russian population in Crimea, is 65%. So, I mean, come on, this is basic logic. This is what shocked me, because here in Romania we are so immersed into this pro US language that nobody had the courage to say anything else. But I just came across this information accidentally, and I started saying to myself, why? Don't you think it's a little odd that these people voted for being with Russia and not with Ukraine? I mean, 65% are Russians. What is the big deal here? What is the
yeah,
big surprise here?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also, yeah, for the end, I just want to say this. There is a clear strategy. There is a clear and visible strategy on the part of Russia. Russia says, we are defending our sovereignty. There will be no war on Russian territory anymore, ever. And we're preparing for that, and we're working on this, okay? I want to ask, where is the American strategy? I want to see it, because so far I've listened to the speech delivered on the 3rd of January, the 4th of January by Joe Biden about the foreign policy. Then we waited until Tony Blinken becomes the Secretary, the Secretary of State. And then then we waited for his speech, and I listened to his speech, and nothing. It's like, zero. Our partners, maybe not so many interventions. We'll see about that. Well, we're not sure. Well, we got to push forward. Democracy. Oh, human rights. Like, guys, just a word of advice. It's not going to work anymore. Okay. I mean, this
You
is,
really think so? Well, maybe not globally, but I think in countries like Romania is going to work, because I just want to add something here from the media theory point of view, since this is my main area of expertise. Now, everybody is, so afraid of Russia, Sputnik, and the Russian propaganda. I don't think my students, and I don't think more than 2% of the population has heard of Vekontakte, for instance, or that more than 10,000 people are looking and watching or reading Sputnik. They don't have the power to inform. I once wrote that if you are an information, the last place you would want to end up is Sputnik, because nobody's going to take you for serious if you end up there. But they have a huge power, and we gave them that power. I want to talk here about this perverse effect. They have the power to smear. If today Sputnik decides to lionize and to praise some Romanian politician, that politician is finished, because it is the clear and obvious, proof that he is the guy of the Russia.
yeah, but do you realize how easy it makes the for the Russians to actually finish someone off if they actually would have
Yes,
ever
yes,
wanted to do that? So the Romanians
have
did that.
actually so much power because you say they have no foreign policy. Of course, they don't have to have any kind of discourse like that, because they are just selling their own soup over and over again, like democracy. I told you before the show that it was in 1917 that Edward Bernays coined this idea that America is here for the people and not to restore the power of empires, and America is here to spread democracy all over the world.
Right.
And he said that that was, I quote, the big slogan. And
Mm.
this is the music they've been playing for the past century. And you say it's not working. Well, maybe, but in terms of what's happening, for instance, in countries where self-colonization is at such a high level like Romania, I would say that
Yeah.
it will.
Okay. So I agree with you that it might work for a longer period of time in countries like Romania or Poland, for that matter, where people are also, they have this kind of weird attitude towards America, which still for them remains to be largely, okay, not for everybody, but largely a kind of example to follow and stuff like that. Okay, yeah, it's probably going to work for a while in countries like Russia. Sorry, not Russia, not definitely. It's going to work in countries like Poland and Romania. But the point is that Poland and Romania, whether we like it or not, are peripheral countries, and no one really cares. But it's not working globally anymore. I mean, obviously, this is not working. And I'm not talking only about the opposition from the side of Russia and China. Look, they organized a coup some months ago in Bolivia last year. I can't remember exactly when, but it was some months ago. I think less than a year, and it was overcome. The coup was overcome. Okay, they succeeded for a while. It was overcome. They keep trying to organize a coup in Venezuela. It's not working. Okay, like the last coup they really managed to organize was the one in Ukraine, and I think that they just played their hand over. And in a way,
Let's hope so.
no one's agreeing to this kind of thing anymore. Yeah, you're right. Let's hope so, and let's see. And definitely by the last week, this train wreck, I think this is yet another symptom of the empire falling apart. The question is, and Chris Hedges, the American journalist, likes to ask that question: how the empire is going to fall? Because it could fall apart in a kind of peaceful way, which it just implodes, or it could explode, or it could provoke, a terrible global disaster. And we, people like you and me in Poland, Romania, whatever, Bulgaria, and other Eastern European countries, we're in a position where we can only observe at the moment. And unfortunately, we are on the front line. Once again, particularly when it comes to Poland, in 1939 and stuff like that, we are the front country. If anything happens, the first nation, the first society to bear the consequences of it is going to be the one here where I reside.
Oh, yeah, and I'm going to surprise you, and I'm going to say that a part of me wants that to happen, because I've been talking to another specialist in media theory, because we've been observing here some very important media personalities in mainstream TV and so on and so forth, just discussing on and on about how bad Russia is. And she said to me at one point, Maria, we are going to witness, if something happens and we would be forced to switch, from one master, the US, to the Russian, we would be witnessing an Oscar movie, seeing all these idiots from, praising US and criticizing and demonizing Russia, having to switch, their discourses. And for that, a part of him wants to happen, something that wants to see and to witness during my lifetime, a shift in power, just to see those sorry, disgusting individuals that have such an obedient discourse, and they actually made a living and they became famous for praising US and criticizing Putin and having this black and white perspective on international relations. Well, I would love to see them in a situation, where you discussed here, when there is a major shift, in the power balance.
Yeah. But I also want to say that I think it's very naive on the part of those, people that are in charge of foreign policy, quote unquote, foreign policy in Romania or in Bulgaria, for example. I'm thinking they're quite naive to consider that America is now going to prevail forever. I think they just, obviously they're stuck in time, back in the 90s when Fukuyama wrote his book, The End of History. Well, actually, Fukuyama has called it back. He's called it off. He said that he was wrong in that book. So, maybe they should actually read his comments on his, book from the 90s.
No,
and maybe that would...
They would expect, they're higher, because they have this, we have this sign to signal the fact that they are basically hired in some security apparatus department. They expect the boss to tell them. And
okay.
I would love to see the moment that the boss comes with the idea, you have now to change their discourse completely. I would love to see their faces.
Yeah, you see, but the sad thing about it is that our elites, they're going to do that. They're not going to have a problem. Yeah, they're like, just like that. It's going to happen. A snap of fingers, and they're going to love someone else now. And that's of course a very serious question, because that's a question of sovereignty, and that's a question of who we really are and what do we matter to each other and to ourselves. Because we like to complain about our politicians, and I think it's most of the grief is fair and absolutely legitimate. But it's also up to us in the final aftermath whether we're going to be putting up with them, because no one's going to do that job for us. Okay, like some of our nations were lucky. Okay, and we had some very serious development. Okay, over the course of the 50 years between 1945 and 1990. Some were less lucky. Okay, but this was just something that came from outside. Now the question is whether we are capable of dealing with our own problems, within the instruments that we have. And we do have instruments. In a way, I want to say that the public is a very important factor in politics, in internal politics, particularly in politics of countries like Romania, Bulgaria, or Poland, Eastern Europe in general. Because everybody, all the leaders, so-called leaders, statesmen, and so on and so forth, they rule just because we agree to this bullshit that they keep selling us. They've been selling us for the last 30 years. And once we stop agreeing, strange things happen. And unfortunately, and again, we come back to my favorite topic, the left is absent, because once the people stop listening to that and start to vote for some kind of change, then you get Kaczynski, okay, or someone like this. And this is, of course, even worse, okay, than it used to be before. But this is the state of affairs. I mean, we gotta face it. And the one thing that is perhaps kind of hopeful is that, look, the shifts in the international politics are going to happen. Okay, that's obvious. I mean, even if you look at the economy, for example, the manufacturing power of China has exceeded the one of the United States quite some time ago. All right, and also the achievements of the planned economy. Okay, the one of China. And the investments, the public investments on the from the side of the Russian state, all this matters, okay? And it says that changes and shifts are inevitable. Now the question is whether there's going to be a leader here or there that is going to be able to use that opportunity in order to make things better for any of the states in Eastern Europe, in the former Eastern Bloc. Now, as you said, doubtful, but not entirely impossible.
Thank you so much, Boyan. It was great talking to you as usual. Now, for the viewers, if you liked our show, please go to Patreon and support us. We need your help because you are the only help we can count on right now. And thank you very much. Stay healthy, keep fighting, and see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.